Lila hesitated at the entrance of the upscale restaurant, her reflection flickering in the glass doors like a ghost unsure of belonging. The place gleamed with luxury, golden chandeliers, crisp linen, and a faint aroma of truffle oil that hinted at prices she couldn't afford even on her best day. She took a deep breath, clutching the strap of her worn purse as if it could anchor her to the ground. She had borrowed the navy blue dress from her neighbor, pressing it 3 times that afternoon to smooth out the creases. It was a little loose around the shoulders, but it was the best she could do. Her shoes, though polished, had scuff marks at the heel, small reminders of the miles she had walked in them searching for work. The hostess glanced up, eyes sweeping over her appearance with a flicker of polite confusion. "Reservation name?" she asked, her smile practiced but thin. Lila tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and said softly, "Lila Morris." "I think he's already here." The hostess scanned the list and nodded. "Of course, Ms. Morris. Right this way." Lila followed her through the maze of tables, her heart thudding in her chest. Every clink of silverware sounded louder, every whispered laugh sharper. The diners were dressed in silk, in confidence. She felt like a shadow drifting among them. But she kept her chin up, reminding herself that she wasn't here to impress anyone, she was here because, for once, she had said yes. When she reached the table, she saw him, Adrian Voss, before he looked up. He was the kind of man who seemed to fill the space around him effortlessly, as if the air itself bent to his presence. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly cut, and he sat with a stillness that made everyone else seem restless. Lila almost turned around right then, the urge to flee rising like a tide. What was she doing here? A woman who'd been juggling part-time jobs and overdue rent sitting across from a man who probably had an assistant to polish his watch. But then, as if sensing her hesitation, Adrian lifted his gaze. Their eyes met, hers uncertain, his assessing. For a heartbeat, the noise of the restaurant faded. And in that silence, he saw something unexpected. Not just a nervous woman out of place, but someone who carried a quiet kind of courage. Lila took a breath, stepped forward, and smiled. It was small, but it reached her eyes. "Mr. Voss," she said. He stood. Not because it was expected, but because something in him compelled it. "Lila," he replied, voice low and steady. "I'm glad you came." And for the first time that evening, she believed he meant it. The waiter had just stepped away, leaving them with 2 glasses of water and a silence that felt both fragile and heavy. Lila sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her fingertips tracing the seam of her dress. Adrian studied her from across the table, trying to read her expression, not the polite mask she wore, but the flicker of something underneath. He had met countless women over the years, models, heiresses, investors' daughters, all polished and poised, all speaking the same rehearsed language of ambition and charm. But this woman, she seemed untouched by that world. Lila lifted her gaze and caught him watching her. "You don't have to look so serious," she said with a small, nervous laugh. "It's just dinner." He blinked, momentarily thrown off. "I suppose I don't know how to do just dinner anymore," he admitted. The honesty surprised even him. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You'd be surprised how easy it is. You just talk." "About what?" he asked. "Anything that isn't work." That made him chuckle. A quiet, unexpected sound. It softened the sharp lines of his face, made him look less like a CEO and more like a man who hadn't laughed in too long. Lila noticed it, too. She relaxed a little, tucking one leg behind the other as she leaned forward. "Okay," she said, eyes brightening a little. "Let's start simple. Favorite book?" He hesitated, caught off guard again. "I haven't read anything that wasn't a quarterly report in years." "Then that's sad," she said, not cruelly but with genuine sympathy. "You're missing a lot." He tilted his head, amused. "And you, what's your favorite?" Her answer came without hesitation. "The Little Prince." Adrian smiled faintly. "That's a children's story. It's for people who forget what it's like to be one," she replied softly. "It reminds you that not everything important can be seen." For a long moment, he said nothing. Something in her words lingered, brushing against a part of him he thought had long gone quiet. The waiter returned with their meals, a perfectly plated steak for him, a simple pasta for her. She looked at the dish as though it were too fancy, hesitating before taking a bite. Adrian watched the way she closed her eyes for a second, savoring it, not out of greed or pretense but gratitude. "You don't come to places like this often, do you?" he asked, though his tone was more curious than condescending. She shook her head. "No, I usually cook for myself. Simple things. Soup, rice, sometimes pancakes if I'm in the mood." "That sounds nice," he said, surprising himself again. Lila smiled. "You'd be welcome to join sometime. But you'd have to wash your own plate." He laughed. A real laugh this time. Heads turned briefly from nearby tables, startled by the rare sound. Lila didn't seem to notice. She was too busy trying to decide if she liked the man behind the reputation, and Adrian, for the first time in years, was wondering if someone might finally be seeing him for more than his name. By the time the main course had been cleared, the distance between them had shifted, not physically, but in tone, in ease, in something unspoken. The earlier stiffness had melted into something warmer, quieter, almost comfortable. Lila was no longer sitting on edge. Her laughter came more easily now, and Adrian found himself listening more than speaking, which was rare for him. He was used to controlling conversations, guiding them toward outcomes, decisions, deals. But with her, there was nothing to win, nothing to sell. Just being. "So," she said, stirring her water with the straw, "your sister set this up, right? I hope she doesn't think I'm some kind of charity case." Adrian's brows lifted slightly. "She thinks I'm the charity case." That made Lila laugh, an honest, melodic laugh that made something in his chest tighten. "Then maybe she's right about both of us," she said lightly. "Two lost causes sharing overpriced pasta." He smiled, but his eyes lingered on her face. There was a shadow there, faint but real, the kind that didn't come from bad lighting but from a life that had known struggle. "You said earlier you don't drink anymore," he said gently, not prying, but curious. Lila hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, my father drank. Too much. When I was younger, I swore I'd never let a bottle decide who I became. But then life happened. Bills, jobs that never called back, people who made promises they didn't keep. One night, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman holding the glass. Her tone wasn't bitter. It was steady, the voice of someone who had already forgiven herself. So I stopped," she continued. "That was 3 years ago." Adrian leaned back, studying her. In his world, people confessed things for leverage. Every truth had a price. But she said it like it was just a fact, not something to earn pity or admiration. He found that disarming. "You have courage," he said simply. She met his gaze, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. "No, I have fear, but I learned how to walk through it." The air between them changed again, heavier this time, yet softer too. He found himself wanting to tell her things he hadn't told anyone in years, about the loneliness of success, the quiet exhaustion that came with pretending he was untouchable. But he held back, not wanting to shatter the fragile balance of their moment. Instead, he asked, "What do you do, Lila?" She smiled, embarrassed. "Right now, I work part-time at a bookstore. And I paint. Or at least I try to. Paint." "Yeah," she said, her eyes lighting up for the first time. "Mostly small things. Portraits, cityscapes, whatever I can afford to finish before rent's due. But my dream is to open a little art studio for kids. A place where they can just be themselves." He listened. Truly listened, as she spoke, his usual cynicism slipping away. There was no angle, no ambition behind her words. Just hope, pure and fragile. When she looked up and saw him watching her, she smiled shyly. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said quietly. "It's just been a long time since I've met someone who still believes in something." She tilted her head, her eyes warm but steady. "Maybe you just stopped looking." For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the restaurant faded, the clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation, until there was only the two of them, sitting across a small table, seeing each other more clearly than either expected. When the waiter returned with the dessert menu, Adrian waved it away. "Just coffee," he said. Lila smiled faintly. She'd noticed he hadn't touched his steak much, too busy asking her questions he didn't usually ask anyone. He wasn't interrogating her the way powerful men did, he was curious, quietly and genuinely curious. The rain had started outside, the faint tapping against the restaurant's tall windows filling the pauses between their words. The golden light from the chandeliers cast a soft glow over her face. Her hair had begun to fall loose from its pins, and a stray curl framed her cheek. She looked like she belonged to another time, simple, unguarded, impossibly real. "I'm sorry if this was awkward," she said after a moment. "I know I'm not what people expect you to, well, date." He set his cup down and leaned forward slightly. "What makes you think you know what people expect from me?" She blinked, caught off guard by his tone. "Because I've read the articles," she said with a wry smile. "The billionaire who owns half the city, who never smiles, who fires people for being 5 minutes late. You don't exactly scream casual dinner companion." He laughed quietly, his gaze lowering to the table. "Those articles are written by people who see me but never really look." "And what would I see if I looked?" she asked softly. For a moment, the mask he wore every day slipped, just a little. "A man who got everything he ever wanted and somehow lost himself in the process," he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Money buys silence, not peace. Power buys obedience, not loyalty. And success." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Success buys emptiness if you're not careful." Lila studied him for a long moment. "Then maybe you've been chasing the wrong things," she said. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Maybe." The check came. Adrian reached for it, but she stopped him with a small shake of her head. "Please, let me at least pay for the coffee." He arched a brow, more amused than offended. "You realize this coffee costs more than most meals." "Then I'll owe you," she said, standing and pulling her coat around her shoulders. "But I always pay my debts." He stood too, watching as she buttoned her coat. The rain outside had grown heavier, streaking the glass like silver threads. "Do you have an umbrella?" he asked. She shook her head, smiling. "I'll be fine. It's just water." He hesitated, wanting to insist, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the quiet pride in her voice. Maybe it was the realization that she didn't need saving. Not from the rain, not from him, not from anything. At the door, she turned back once. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Voss." He gave a small nod. "Adrian," he corrected gently. "Adrian," she repeated, testing the name like it was something fragile. Then she smiled. That small, unguarded smile that had somehow undone all his defenses, and stepped out into the rain. He stood there for a long time after she was gone, watching her figure fade into the glistening streetlights. She walked with no umbrella, no hesitation, her hair catching the rain like silk. To anyone else, she looked like a woman who had nothing, no wealth, no protection, no luxury. But to Adrian Voss, she carried everything that mattered: grace, courage, and a kind of beauty that didn't depend on light to be seen. When he finally turned away, the waiter approached to clear the table. "Will the lady be joining you again, sir?" Adrian looked toward the rain one last time and murmured, almost to himself, "I certainly hope so."